This is quick ball, and again Scotland starts a huge thump coming in, and Martin Williams. But he's up and he's fine. Simon Webster isn't. Simon Webster stayed down. I think he's knocked himself out. Did he use the arms? Did he?
Welcome to this Basketball England seminar series on concussion. So my name is Dane, I'm one of the doctors at Basketball England. So we're going to have a quick look at what concussion is, how it occurs, how to identify it, and how to then manage it. So firstly, let's have a look at concussion and what it really is. So as always, our first task is going to be in groups of 2s and 3s. Now what I want you to do is have a think and discuss the following two questions. So what does your brain do? And secondly, what problems could you have if it's not working well? So your brain specifically, what problems would you have if your brain isn't working well? So again, take a few minutes to answer this question in groups before we feedback. Okay, so let's try and define or explain what a concussion is. So a concussion is an injury to the brain. And if the injury to your brain is severe, you could have bleeding or bigger problems. But a small injury to your brain would be potentially considered in the realms of a concussion. Now, it's still a very important and big issue, and it needs to be managed properly, just like an injury to any other muscle or joint, for example, your calf. The challenge though with managing your brain health is that physically you can feel better far before your brain is actually fully recovered, and it's harder to tell. And like any injury, we need to look after it and manage it carefully to avoid problems later on with the brain. So hopefully this kind of diagrams gives you that spectrum. So we're talking about a more minimal to mild brain injury, but nonetheless it's still a brain injury. And given the brain is one of the most important organs in our body, this is definitely an issue. So talking more about the definition, this is the proper definition of concussion. Now the definition is kind of pitched quite high, isn't it, in terms of the detail here? But really what the definition is saying is it's caused by forces or trauma or injury to the head, likely by things like a collision. And then this causes a range of problems and issues, and that's what we're looking at now. So how do we define it? Well, in terms of definition, if we carry on with the more formal definitions here, the definition also says a concussion can take minutes to hours to show symptoms. So symptoms is what you feel. So it's important to think about, really, did something happen? Was there a decent bash to the head? Was there something that you think, well, this could be a concussion? Because it might take a few minutes to develop, and you might not know straight away. Now, a concussion can't be seen on scans of the head like MRIs, and sometimes concussions can take longer to settle down. So they need advice, and they need good medical support to manage them properly. So let's have a look at how concussions occur. So you've got 5 minutes to have a think about how concussions occur. So think about basketball. When could you get a hit to the head or a head injury? And when could you get a concussion from basketball? Think about where and when you are most at risk. Have a think about the types of players in your team who would be more at risk, and what would they need to be doing to be put at risk. So again, you got 5 minutes, have a think. So if you pause the video here,
and this is something that Miami does really well. You're going to get a foul on the block. And looks like Kevin Love caught one in the face there. He might need my mask on that play right there. Trust me, that's when the mask definitely comes in handy.
So that was a clip of Kevin Love of Cleveland in the playoffs, and you can see what happened there. He gets elbowed right to the head as the guy tries to drive in down the lane, and he gets hit pretty hard and goes straight down. Now, he was then later deemed to be concussed. So there are lots of different ways to get a concussion, but remember, it is a head injury. So if you look at this image here, your brain is basically encased in a solid skull. So when you do get a head injury, your brain shakes inside your skull and it can get bruised and battered around. Now, this is a concussion. Now, while you can't see it or feel it in the same way when it happens to your bones, your muscles, it still happened and it needs some protection to heal. Now, there's a lot of science behind what happens in a concussion, but in a nutshell, you need more energy after a concussion to your brain. So your brain needs more glucose, but your brain is getting less oxygen and blood flow. So it's also getting less energy, so glucose, sugar. At this point, the brain isn't functioning well enough. So things like balance and awareness of your body and your joints are not as good. So actually your risk of injury is very high if you carry on playing at this point. Now, if you got a second hit to the head, so a second concussion almost, while you were still concussed, then potentially this could be catastrophic to the brain, and you might even get large bleeds in the brain, which can be life-threatening. So we call this second impact syndrome. So really important. And this is really why once you get a concussion, people want you straight off. It's the risk of the second blow that is almost as high and almost more important. But if a concussion is managed properly, then everything is fine. But if they're not, then they can cause a lot of potential permanent damage to the brain. And one of these permanent damages are called CTE. So chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So, I mean, why am I telling you all this? Well, it's definitely not to scare you. But to make sure that if you hit your head, that we can manage it properly, that us as a team and you as a player can recognise it and know the importance of doing the right things here for you and for your long-term health. For those of you aged 13 or older, there is a good movie that's PG-13 by Will Smith. It's called Concussion, and it talks a lot about these problems. It's focusing really on the NFL in America. So if you have time to watch it, have a little look. It's got some really good information. You can see the politics and the issues around concussion here. And it was a really big deal back in the day when this particular person that Will Smith is portraying basically finds out that head injuries are happening a lot in football and tries to expose it and make players safe. So again, really good movie. So your Basketball England homework from me is to watch it. Obviously only if your coaches approve. Okay, so you think someone might have a concussion. You've seen them hit their head hard. They're not quite right. You think it's concussion, but you want a bit more information to try and identify it. Well, here are some signs and symptoms to look out for, things that might happen. So, signs and symptoms, well, they can be physical, or they can be related to behaviour, or they can be related to a range of other things. So let's have a look at physical signs first. So with physical signs, you could get a headache, you could feel sick, your balance might be changed, you might actually be sick, you might be dizzy, you might have some visual problems, you might have fatigue or feel more tired or dazed. All of those would be signs for concussion. Of all of the ones on this list, particularly visual problems and vomiting would be a cause of concern and potentially a reason to go straight to A&E. But all of the others may also need further investigation straight away. So we'll talk about this later. So that's physical signs. Well, what about behavioural signs? Well, You might also notice some behavioural changes in your teammate or yourself, depending on who is concussed or might be concussed. So you might notice they're a bit short-tempered or more irritable than usual. They might feel down or emotionally labile, so they might be up and down, quite varied. Or they might just be anxious and nervous. But whatever it is, it's not their usual self, and that's a key thing to look out for. So cognitive is the other. So this is how your brain functions. So you might notice that someone that might have a concussion might almost be a bit foggy or cloudy in the way they're saying it, and they might tell you that they feel like that. They might feel slowed down in terms of their thinking. They might struggle to concentrate. Their memory at the moment might be poor. Their performance will definitely deteriorate or might deteriorate. And an interesting one is their sporting IQ will be different. For example, there's many examples in particularly rugby and football where players who concussed are sent back when they shouldn't have been, and you can see them clearly on the wrong side of the pitch or trying to shoot the wrong way or do something that they just wouldn't normally do. So think about a player on your team went down, they know the plays but they're getting them wrong, or they know this position but they're not doing it, or they're fluffing up simple things they would always do well. So that's cognitive. Then there's also sleep to think about. Has a person noticed any sleep problems? Have they been more drowsy, or have they had difficulty sleeping? So any of these kind of 4 areas, so we talked about sleep, we talked about brain function, we talked about behaviour, and we talked about physical symptoms. Any of those that are potentially present, you would deem that to potentially be a concussion. So if it happens courtside, then ideally an adult, a coach, someone else looking after you would need to ask the player a few questions. Now, if you don't know these questions, potentially it could be a sign of concussion, but maybe you're the type of person that doesn't always know this information, so it isn't easy on its own to just use these questions to diagnose a concussion, but they help you to get towards that, should I pull this person out? So if they have any of those signs or symptoms we talked about, then they should be pulled and stopped from playing. But also potentially if they can't answer these questions, then we should also consider pulling them from play. So for example, the questions might include, what venue are we at today? So where are we playing? Which half is it now? Which we could change to which quarter is it, I guess, as well. Who scored last in this game? So which of your teammates scored last in this game? Or it could be which team member scored last in this game. What team did you play in last week? And what team did you play last week, last game? Depending on how you want to look at that. Did your team win the last game? So these questions are designed for a range of sports. So you've always got to be a little bit specific to your team as well. But, did they know that basic information is key to know. And if they didn't, then potentially there is an injury to their brain. So at Basketball England, we've produced our own basketball concussion guidelines. Now, these have been done using the latest research and guidelines. So do have a look. You can find them on our website. So I've taken a screenshot here. So, do show it to your parents as well so that they're aware of the guidelines. And also be aware that they exist. So should you get concussed, do come here, download the document and read it through with your parents and coaches to make sure you know how you're going to manage this. So if you think someone could be concussed in terms of managing, then you need to sit them straight out. Then we need to get some medical input. So please do go through the BE guidelines. That will tell you about what needs to happen. In the places that you guys are in, most likely thing is to see your GP, unless you're unsure if it's a more severe head injury, or you're unsure whether they need to seek help today. If that is the case, then the best thing to do would be to call 111 and explain what's going on, and then they will make a decision about who you see. They might send you to A&E, or they might send you to the out-of-hours GP. If a more specialist concussion doctor saw you, such as a sports doctor, they may also do a range of concussion tests. So what we're going to do is do a few together to see how you find it. Now remember, this is not all the tests used. I've just picked a few to give you a flavour of how this works. So please don't use this test to diagnose yourself, and do refer anyone you're unsure about to a doctor. The speed of this depends on what you think. If you're unsure, then always call 111 and get their advice on whether you need to be seen today or can go and see your GP tomorrow. Now, if you're told you have a concussion by the doctor, then you need to follow the Basketball England concussion guidelines on returning to play. Now, if you're unsure about how to use it or you need to clarify anything, then please do contact us at Basketball England and I would happily go through that with you. Okay, so first, let's have a look at some of these concussion tests that have been used in the past. So one of the first things on a concussion test is that you would have a little look. So let me open this for you. So you would basically tell us what your symptoms are for main concussion symptoms. So for each symptom, you'd read it out. So I have headaches. And then you go, well, okay, do I have it a lot? In which case it's a 3. Do I have it sometimes? In which case it's a 2. Rarely or little 1, or not at all 0. I feel dizzy. And you do the same from 0 to 3. And you do that for all the main symptoms of concussion. Now for a child, a parent would also do what they think is also the case. So to try and take both together to help you. So this is the symptom bit. Then there are other things you can do. So we could test your memory and concentration. So let's do this one together. So I'm going to test your memory. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you a list of words. So I hope you're concentrating. And when I'm done, I want you to repeat as many words back to me as you can. Remember, the order doesn't matter. So you ready? Okay, so listen carefully. Elbow, apple, carpet, saddle, bubble. Can you repeat those 5 words back to me, please? So have a go, see what you do. Okay, so you should have got elbow, apple, carpet, saddle, bubble. If you got all 5, great. If you didn't, have a think about, well, at the moment you're not concussed. So interestingly, not everyone is always going to get 100%. And not a failed answer doesn't necessarily mean they're concussed. But it all just kind of helps build a picture for the doctor to make that decision. Okay, so for the next one, you need to partner up. And it has to be in 2s ideally. So your partner needs to face away from the screen. So they need to turn their chair around or stand up and face away from the screen so they can't see it. Okay, you've got a minute to sort yourselves out so that your partner is standing away from the TV screen and cannot see the screen. Okay, so your partner should now be facing away from the screen and you're sat in your chair. So what you're going to do is you can see the screen. You're going to read some numbers out loud to your partner. They are then going to repeat them back to you, but in reverse order. So for example, if I say 1, 2, then your partner should say 2, 1. Does that make sense? So you're going to reverse the order. Okay, the numbers are going to come up on screen. So what I need you to do is tell your partner the numbers and then they will reverse it back to you. So there are 4 levels to this game. Have a go. You only get to move on if you get the last level right, but just see how you get on. It's only for a bit of fun. Okay, so let's start with the top line first, guys. Okay, so you're just going to read out the top line. So just looking at A, you're going to read out the top line. So once you've done that, your partner is going to reverse that number. Okay, so the first one was 5, 2, and your partner should have then reversed it and said 2, 5. Okay, hope you're getting this. Okay, so next number. Just focus on the number. So if you read the number out to your partner slowly and carefully, and then they need to try and hold it in their head and reverse it back to you. Okay, so the number was 493, and if you reversed it, that would have been 394. So hopefully you're still with me. Okay, so next number for our guys. So remember to read this 4 string number out to your partner, and then your partner needs to reverse it. Okay, so the number was 3814. So your partner should have said 4183. Okay, so we're going to do one more. So this one's 5. Okay, so 5 numbers. Okay, so read them out again to your partner, and then hopefully they will now hold it in their head and try and reverse it for you. Okay, so the number was 62971, and they should have said 17926. Okay, so there's another 5th level there, so you can always try that later if you want to take a picture of it and have a go and see if someone can test you. So now we're going to switch over. So what I need you to do is the person that was standing away from the screen is now going to read out the numbers, and you're going to swap places basically. So swap places with the person you've just been working with, and I'm going to give you a new set of numbers and you can try that for 4. Okay, swapped places. I hope so, because I'm now showing you the numbers. Okay, so you're now in the hot seat. So you're going to read out these 2 numbers to them, and then they need to reverse it for you. Okay, so it's 4-1, and they should have said 1-4. So next number. Okay, so read it out to them. So 3 numbers here, and then let them reverse it. So it's 629. So the answer would be 926. Okay, 2 more levels to go. So read out the 4 string number and get them to repeat it back to you. So you should have said 3279, and they should have said 9723. Okay, last level. Okay, so starting here. Okay, so read this number out to them. So you got 5 numbers here, and let them reverse it. Okay, so the number is 15286. So if you were going to reverse that, that would be 68251. Alright, so that was a number 1. So you can see how that requires quite a lot of concentration. You almost need to hold the numbers in your head and reverse it. So if you are having issues with brain functioning, this may be something you wouldn't get down very well at all. Okay, so before we go on to balance, we have one more thing to do here. So the next task is going to be, now can you ask your partner to tell you the months in reverse order, starting with December and November, and go from there. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to try that. So tell your partner the months in reverse order, starting with December and then November, and go from there. Once you've done that, swap over, let the other person try it. See how easy you find it, and do they miss any months? Okay, hopefully you paused the video and you've had 5 minutes. How did you find that? It's not always as easy as it initially sounds, because it's not something you normally do in that order, so most people find that quite difficult. Okay, so now as part of this, we do a balance test. It's called a modified best test. So what you're going to do here, so staying in your partners, get your partner to stand up. And then what you're going to do is you're going to ask them to put their feet together, like this person in A, and put their hands on their hips. Once they've done that, you're going to ask them to close their eyes. And you're going to basically see how good their balance is. So we would look at their balance for 20 seconds. So just have a look and see how well balanced they are for 20 seconds. Okay, so that's 20 seconds. That was feet together. So now, swap over, make sure the other person has done that as well, and see what you think for 20 seconds again. So hands on hips, feet together, eyes closed. See how good their balance is. If they lose their balance, they can open their eyes, reset themselves, and then see how you get on. Okay, perfect. So that was A. So now we're going to do letter B. Okay, so this time what you're going to do is ask them which leg is their kicking leg. So if they're right-footed, they're going to stand on their left leg like the person in the image, hands on hips. Once you've asked them to do that, ask them to shut their eyes, and you got 20 seconds. Okay, once you've done that, swap over, try the other person. So I'm going to give you roughly a minute so you can do that each. So you're doing letter B now. So eyes closed, hands on hips, standing on your left leg if that's your non-dominant leg. Okay, letter B. So I'll give you a minute. So pause the video, take a minute to do this, and then we'll come back. Okay, so the last one is C. So this time you're going to put your left leg behind your right leg, or it's the leg that you did your balance test on behind your other leg. So you're in almost like a tightrope, or you're about to walk the line. So it's heel to toe. Once you've done that, your hands are on your hips and your eyes are closed. So again, I'll give you a minute. Let your partner do it first and then swap over so you've both done it. Okay, great. So that was the modified best test. So again, a really good indicator of a potential concussion, because your balance will usually be off. So here's a copy of the return to play guidelines. So if you are concussed, these are the guidelines to follow. For yourselves, because of your age group, you would be a minimum of 23 days to get back to full play. Now, while this might seem a long time, it's really, really important for your brain to have that rest and that time to recover. So firstly, it's 14 days of relative rest. So that means no heavy exercise, no heavy mental stimulation such as TVs, phones, computers. It should really be the most boring 14 days of your life. In terms of schoolwork and returning, you try and do that first slowly over those 2 weeks. And then once you're signed off by a doctor, so after those 2 weeks, you need to be ideally signed off by a doctor saying you're okay to start light exercise. And then if you follow the guidelines, it gives you examples of what to do at each stage. And there are basically 6 stages to work through before you're ready to come back. So you spend nearly 2 days on each stage, and we gradually get you back. And as long as you have no new symptoms of concussion, then you can keep progressing. Anyway, it's got exactly when and how and who needs to see you before you can return to play. So please do read the guidelines on the Basketball England website, and do show it to your doctor, particularly if you're going to GP or A&E, as some doctors have an interest, but other doctors may not have seen many concussions just purely because they work more in a hospital setting than a sports setting. So if you take it along, it would really support them in making the right decision and helping you as well to decide what to do next. As always, if you're not sure, please do get in touch with us at Basketball England, and we'll happily talk you through what needs to happen next. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a quick overview on concussion. Now remember to check out those Basketball England guidelines, and should your parents or coaches that you use outside of the Basketball England program have any questions, do get in touch with us. Now I really hope this video will help you look after yourself better, but also recognise an issue in your teammate, because you might be the first person to see it. And I think it's really important to get right as you embark on your journey as an athlete and as a basketball player. So that completes this seminar series video on concussion. As always, if you have any questions, do get in touch anytime. Otherwise, see you on the next one.